Hey everybody, it's Sophie and Marco, Dish Out on the Movies, and we're on episode 8 of The Alienist. And a lot happened in this episode. The episode was called Psychopathia Sexualis.
I think the writers have that disease. Ha 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 ha.
Which means something like inappropriate sexual desire. It is also the name of a real forensic reference book for psychiatrists, physicians, and judges, and also a movie of the same name which opened in 2006 about sexual deviance in the Victorian era.
And we're not going to review that, by the way.
No. By the way, I finished rereading the Alienist book. At the end, I will tell you what two big scenes that were in the show, but not a trace of them appeared in the book. In addition, I read an article about Caleb Carr and his opinion of the Alienist series, and we'll talk about that at the end too. Okay, remember last week when Roosevelt observed the group's autopsy of the latest victim, Rosie, and he said it reminded him of the murdered soldiers he saw on the battlefield of Custer's Last Stand? Then Chrysler, Sarah, and the rest surmised that maybe the killer might be a soldier or other person who had been in that battle or seen similar killings out west. Combing through correspondence from various asylums, their group discovered a person matching the profile of their killer who was sent to a federal asylum in Washington, D.C., which is a special place for soldiers who have been declared mentally unfit. Chrysler and Moore traveled to Washington by train. Because Moore had gotten ambushed the night before they left by that fired bad cop O'Connor, he boarded the train with a pair of two black eyes. However, he wouldn't tell Chrysler the truth about how he got them. Little do they know that they're being followed. What is that about? Well, unfortunately, the problem is ex-Commissioner Burns talked to Connor and put a hit out on Chrysler. He didn't put it that way, but he implied it, because I don't think they talked like that back then. That's the way I'm talking. Anyway, Burns does this because he says he doesn't like their modern police methods and doesn't want Chrysler to get any credit for solving the murders, which makes absolutely no sense to me. In Washington, while Chrysler searched through records in the mental hospital and Moore focused on photographs of butchered bodies at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, interestingly, they zeroed on the same two suspects. One was new to them, and the other was the man they originally thought might be the killer, whose name was Rudolph Bunze. Unfortunately, the head of the asylum found that Rudolph Bunze had died a few months before and buried in Arlington Cemetery. John Beecham is the name of the new suspect who had grown up in New Paltz, New York. The weird thing was that he was from the same place as a pair of murdered missionaries whose son had been kidnapped by Indians in New Paltz. His brother, Adam Drury, was the name of the boy who had been kidnapped, and his brother had moved away years before to farm in Newton, Massachusetts, and was not there when it happened. What happened to Adam Drury? Did Indians really travel all the way to New Paltz, New York from out west to kidnap the boy of missionaries and kill his parents? No. Chrysler and Moore traveled to Newton, Massachusetts to meet and talk with the oldest Drury son. They did not tell him about the New York murders. He said his parents were horrible and his mother was cold, The mother would tell little Adam that he was the bastard son of redskin savages, constantly berating him. Their father had taken photos of the grisly battlefield in South Dakota, or I could be wrong about that, but of that battle with Sitting Bull, Custer's Last Stand, to show his church parishioners in New Paltz, so they would give him more money to do his missionary work out west. Christianize the Indians, savages, whatever. I'm just saying what they would have said. Anyway, his plan backfired, and instead people thought he was weird. Unfortunately, the parents showed those ugly pictures to Adam over and over and over again, while putting him down constantly. In fact, the only good times for Adam were when the big brother took his little brother climbing up the Shawangunk Mountains outside New Paltz.
And showing those pictures like all the time and saying you're going to hell if you don't convert, like that's like a technique that's used today with
Gays.
religious groups and like abortion. They'll show these stupid pictures that might have not even been like real pictures. At least back then, those were real pictures.
Yeah, but he was just a little boy. And he also had a facial tic, and when he was really upset, it got worse, and when he was happy, it didn't even show up. So when they would go up in the mountains, and they would just stay up there all the time. In fact, he was almost like when he was older, he was like sleeping outside all the time up there. He wouldn't even stay home. Anyway, one day a man named John Beecham, the real John Beecham, befriended Adam, and they went climbing together. But one day, Adam came home upset and crying because Beecham had raped him. The big brother finally left home one day to farm in Newton, Massachusetts, while Adam was left to his own devices. It didn't end well. The parents were murdered, the boy kidnapped, and John Beecham had his throat cut and thrown down the mountain. And unfortunately, this big brother thinks his brother Adam did all those bad things. Chrysler and Moore are attacked on the way back to the train station. They barely make it there, and while they are walking, Chrysler tells Moore he is in love with Mary. In the book, the scene where they're evading being killed is a lot more involved and exciting. They just didn't have time to do everything, but it was a lot more involved in the book. Meanwhile, Sarah takes a paddle wheel boat to New Paltz, which was really cool. She took a look at the place where the Drury family had lived and talked to the sheriff and other people about the family. She finds a burnt box of body trophy parts in the burned out rubble. I didn't get the part about the house was burned down, and I don't know if people just decided to burn it down and I think they talked about it, but I haven't had a chance to watch the episode again. But Marco, didn't you say something about that box she found?
No.
Well, we just thought it was kind of interesting. It might have been metal, and so that's why it would have survived a fire. I'm talking about a major fire that burned every little bit of the house down, and all that was left was a skeleton of it, and it was black and charred. And so you see this little box in this corner of probably part of a house, and I don't even know what was in. I couldn't even tell what it was, because I didn't know, they didn't take the picture well enough or what. But anyway, back to the story. Lucius and Marcus, their mission is to travel to South Dakota to see John Beecham's former military commander, who said John Beecham was a good soldier until they were asked to tangle with the workers in the Haymaker riots in Chicago. Although the incident happened 10 years ago, he would never forget the scene of John Beecham naked, covered in blood, stabbing a young worker over and over again. I won't say what happens next, but it's heartbreaking. By the way, if you haven't figured out, Adam Dury changed his name to John Beecham. Marco, do you want to say anything?
Oh, okay. Oh, I want to say anything? Okay. It was, it was okay. uh, I mean,
Well, if you don't, if
we
you,
have 2 episodes left, and
yeah,
they can't really. I mean, there wasn't really much of their agenda pushing in this episode. Thankfully, like it felt like, oh, we have to now focus on story, and they did an okay job, I guess. I don't know. It's it's not a phenomenal story. It's not a phenomenal show. It's just fun, and well, I've seen a lot better, and when you see really, really good stuff like Breaking Bad, Bates Motel, Being Human, it kind of spoils you because then you see a show like this, and it's just okay. It's not like horrible except for the agenda pushing, and you're always comparing it to those shows, and compared to those shows, this episode was fine. I thought the action scenes were a bit excuse me again. They were a bit rushed and frantic, especially the escape scene because it was just like 1, 2, 3, we're done. And I wish it had been drawn out a little bit more, like a an epic, more of an epic scale instead of this short, not significant moment like it is in the book apparently.
well, the problem is they didn't have the time because what they decided to fit into this episode, and because there's two more left and they have to get the killer, and what's going to happen to all of them, and so the bad thing that happens, that's all drawn out pretty much. So you'll see.
No,
We just don't want to give.
Disagree.
Well,
Think
it was. I thought
rushed too.
compared to in the book, the scene about the train, Chrysler and Moore having to escape being killed because they put a hit on a Chrysler. This guy's trying to kill them, Chrysler, and that scene is very drawn out in the book. It's very exciting. It's like any kind of action scene in any movie where they're running and hiding, and they don't have
short, though.
they have no guns on them either or anything to defend themselves. They just have to avoid being shot at.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot more. I mean, they're a lot more danger than maybe in some kind of movie where everybody has a gun and they're shooting
like
at each other.
John Wick, where it's just like boom, 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 you're all dead.
Yeah, there's no. And they in the book, they only have they're being drawn by a one horse carriage, and the horse gets killed, and the driver runs into the woods, and Chrysler and Moore have to run along the road until somebody picks them up in another carriage. There's no cars. It's all carriages with horses. So the last big thing that happens in the show, which I'm not going to tell you because I told a lot.
It was predictable, though. I predicted it.
Marco predicted it, but it's a lot more drawn out in comparison to everything else. With Sarah was in New Paltz. Well, what they showed, that was good enough. And then Marcus and Lucius and the Dakotas, they show them looking at Sitting Bull's grave marker. And
in fact, with all the changes that they've made to the book, I think that the one change that they should have made to make the show even better was to not do the thing that they did at the end of the episode because I thought it was stupid. Personally,
I don't know. We'll see what happens.
It was stupid and pointless because it didn't even mean to happen. So, I mean, it's even more stupid. It's almost like, and I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this, but in Tarantino's movies, like the reason why I don't really like Inglourious Bastards is because you have these characters and they just get killed off at the drop of the hat, and I don't like that. I like having characters that you can invest in and they don't just get killed off like on accident or just at a table playing a game. I like it when you have characters that stick around. And so I think that they should have actually not killed her character.
Okay, well, don't say anything else because I want to make sure that people people find out for themselves. Okay, well, I wanted to say, remember the two scenes that were on the show and we felt that they didn't belong and were part of some kind of agenda? One was Chrysler slapping Sarah. The other was Cyrus's sister practically accusing Chrysler of keeping Cyrus like a slave. Never happened. First of all, if Cyrus had a sister, she's not in the book. In fact, there's no mention of a sister anywhere. I kept waiting for her to show up, and I read and I read and I read, and you know, he gets out of the he brings him a meal just like that was in the show from Delmonico's, which is an expensive French restaurant, and he brings it and gives it to Cyrus himself, and then eventually Cyrus has to come back, and Sarah takes care of him, and well, Mary's helping take care of him, but anyway, he's in bed. He's still recovering, but there's no sister.
And there's no part where he's frantically running around firing people because he thinks that he's a slave owner. I mean, that's the type of that's kind of like revisionist history.
Yeah, well, he does say, you know, do you want to go and live somewhere else? Maybe well, no, that's in the show. No, they never does that. No. That's right. Okay, I'm getting...
Boom!
So, and then the thing about Chrysler slapping Sarah, which I thought was really odd, because he's so professional
it's an
acting.
Agenda.
He never touches her.
And I think
he may have gotten mad at her, but he never touched her.
It's funny because I think Caleb Carr would be very disappointed with that, especially because the characters treat her with so much respect in the book.
Yes.
None of them would ever do something like that. And on the show, of course they would, because women are victims of everything on the show.
The only thing is, and they show this in the they do this in the show too. She did want to go to Washington with them, but they wanted her to stay back because she was kind of like coordinating everything. She had to coordinate the boys, the forensic boys going to the Dakotas. She had to end up going to New Paltz, and then they had to go to Washington, then go to Newton, Massachusetts, to see the brothers. So she was disappointed, but it wasn't a big deal like they kind of make it out to be in the show. But anyway, let's see, where am I?
I would rate the episode a B minus because there wasn't any agenda pushing in it, and Sarah was hardly in it, so.
Well, in the book, what happens is, remember, he hits her, and what happened was she found this newspaper article, and they showed that in the TV show. But in the book, she shows it to John, which they did in the show, but they just read it and they figured out what happened to him when he was a kid, and then they burned it, and they said they would never speak of it again. So that was it. They just...
But on the show,
yeah.
She's focusing on that instead of trying to find a pedophile serial killer. She's got to focus on his arm, and she's got to like confront him about it, like he's horrible for hiding a secret like that.
Well, the reason why she confronted him was because she thought, remember, her theory was that the mother was a problem, and he didn't agree because he thought if the mother was the problem, why isn't he going after girls? And that
Yeah,
is kind of weird.
like
I
in
don't get.
Psycho.
Yeah, that's why I didn't get that either. Really, I didn't understand. Maybe just because I'm dense or something. But so she thought because of something that happened to him in his childhood, that his perception of things were somewhat jaded because of his own experiences. He wasn't, in other words, he wasn't looking at it objectively enough, like an academic should. Anyway, I wanted to contact Caleb Carr and ask what he thought about the people who made the show putting in scenes that weren't in the book. Instead, I found an article on his Facebook page where he was interviewed about it at storiesflow.com. The title is Writer Caleb Carr Keeps TV's Alienist at Arm's Length by Steve Barnes, and it was published on January 22nd, 2018. In the article, I want to say that the major thing that Caleb Carr did not like about the show was the actor who played Teddy Roosevelt. As a well-known and respected military historian, Carr is very familiar with Roosevelt and thinks Brian Garrity was just totally wrong for the part. I also wanted to let everyone know that Carr's third novel in this series is called The Alienist at Armageddon and is due out this fall. And his novel, The Angel of Darkness, which was published in 1997, has been, quote, optioned for a possible future show. Finally, his novel, Surrender, New York, which was published in 2016, is under development at Fox as a possible series.
Let's get off of the informative stuff. What would you rate the episode?
Oh,
would you rate it a B minus like
no,
me?
I gave it a B, and it's only because actually I give it a B plus. I just think it was a technical thing. The part about Chrysler and Moore having to evade this killer, it was a lot more, like I said, it was a lot more drawn out in the book. It was really exciting, and it's too bad that they didn't show that, because you're talking about somebody like a sniper who's trying to kill them with a gun, and
they don't have any guns.
And they have no guns, so they're really...
It should be even more suspenseful, but it's not really.
And they don't get hurt at all. Like you see, I mean, that was one thing that was good in the show. They showed them, the horse running away with them in the carriage, and they go over a bridge down a huge embankment, and they don't really do that in the book. But they're having to run and hide everywhere, and the men or man follows them to I think it was men, follows them to the train station, and they have to hide on the train to escape them, and they don't even, I think they're even not even in the train car itself. They're like on the outside in those little, I don't know what you call. I don't know the parts of a train, but
those
like little area where they can.
Horrible.
The what?
Those Crep police are horrible people. The Buffalo Bill guy, he's horrible.
That's the ex-commissioner Burns.
And then Connor, he's horrible. Like even on just a nice day, he's standing outside and he's being a jackass to this little kid for no reason. I mean, their characters, they really are stereotypical bad guys,
yeah.
But I think that both of those actors are actually pretty good, and I would say that they elevate the show a little bit with the fact of how deep they are compared to, because there's no villain that you can see around. There's no villain.
Well, you never see the killer until
Yeah.
the end. We'll see how they work it out.
And I will ask, just just thinking about when they fight, if they fight the killer at all, which I bet that they do. They com- they're confronted with him and they have a dialogue of some sort. Does his facial tick come into play and like beating him? Does he get like so angry that it's like shaking and that it's enough to overpower him, or what?
Well, it's just not anger, it's any kind of emotion. Heavy emotion, like if he's scared, upset, like sad, angry, anything. It's any kind of emotion sets it off. The only time he, according to the book, and it might have said that in the show too, the only time that it doesn't, the facial tick doesn't even show is that when he's up in the mountains climbing, that it's his favorite thing and it's something that he really loves.
So is Chrysler gonna screw with him to make his face shake around?
You'll see what happens. I won't reveal anything. There's still 2 more episodes, and like I said, something terrible happens.
Not really that terrible. It's kind of predictable.
But it's just bad, and you'll have to. I just encourage everybody to read the book, and that's one thing. The Caleb Carr, even though he found some things that he didn't like about the show,
A lot of things.
he wanted people to remember to read the book, because he said he would be glad if people returned to the book
Instead.
and read it. Yeah, well, they're not gonna. It just piques, to have a show like that piques people's interest, maybe in reading the book too or whatever. But anyway, it's the thing is only 10 episodes, and we said in the beginning, it's because it said there was like 20 something. Well, all of those things they called episodes, those are extras. So for some reason, maybe if you go to the alien, what is it, alienist.com or something, they say something about it at the end of the show when it's on. Maybe you can see the extras, but I look on TNT. I've tried to look at the extras. I haven't been able to do it. So I wanted to see. They did have them on there, and then they took them off. So I'm going to try and look just to see what all they had. I did look at some of them.
And I also liked how they didn't have any agenda commercial this time.
No, yeah, that's right. They did not show their agenda commercial with the one with the women characters and all these TNT shows and whatever else they said. I just didn't pay attention because I don't care about that. I just care about the story. So, and how it's portrayed. So, okay, everybody. So, episode 9 is coming up on Monday. And be sure to watch it. And also, I don't know when Marco's going to do it, but we have been watching MasterChef Junior, and we have reviewed the first 3 episodes of it, and Marco needs to upload them. And then we have a couple of more movies to watch, and then we're going to watch a bunch of Hitchcock movies. Yay!
Yeah, just so you guys are aware, we were going to watch Hitch and Game Night, but we've kind of changed plans around, and I've been thinking about some of the movies we could watch, and a couple of them, 1 or 2 of them I'll say. Blood Simple, directed as the Coen brothers' first movie, and its relationship, because, well, I won't spoil anything, but it's a relationship that gets torn apart in some way or another. And another one could be Mystery Men, Wedding Crashers, and so we'll be figuring that out and getting it done like the next couple of days. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.